It's time to stare at that blank page and figure out what you're going to write. Because today is the number one way of content marketing for 2022. I've talked about the 5 ways in the last 6 weeks. We took a break. Today is number 1, and this one really is the most important. So we're going to get right into that in the Easy SEO and More podcast. Hey everybody, I'm Dr. Ty. Thank you so much for being a part of my podcast. Thank you for watching or listening, whichever way that you're doing it. I have talked about 5 ways to do content marketing in 2022. Several weeks ago, I started with webinars and videos. Number 4 was ebooks, blogs, and emails. And today is going to be a little bit about that as well. Number 3 was all about infographics, how to use infographics to not only engage your customers, but to work with SEO and marketing as well. Last week, I talked about podcasts, whether you're doing your own podcast or interviewing on someone else's. And this week, it's all about writing. Yes, that dreaded writing content, looking at that blank page and not being able to figure out what you're going to put on it. It is the most important thing, because if you think about it, let's say the internet becomes perfect and Google and Bing and Yandex and Yahoo and all the search engines, when you do a video, they automatically transcribe it and they know exactly what the video is saying. What are they transcribing that to? Text. Let's say they automatically transcribe all the podcasts and they do it automatically and it works fantastic. What are they transcribing those podcasts to? Text. Text runs the internet. I've been on the Messages and Methods podcast a couple of times now. Actually, I think 3 times now. And Toby and Shelley run that podcast, and I really like them. Toby mentioned something that I really thought is so true right now. I always say that content is king. And he happened to mention that he thinks that content isn't just king, content is necessary. Saying content is king, meaning content is at the top. It's the most important. It's the ruling authority. But when you say content is necessary, that means it's one of the building blocks, one of the cornerstones that you have to rely on to build everything else up from. And I agree with him. Today, content isn't king. Content is necessary. It has to be done. So let's talk about some ways to get that content done. The first thing you need to do is you need to figure out what keywords your potential clients are using to find your business. That is extremely important. I've done several episodes on keywords, and I'll be linking to them in the show notes. So if you go to portbell.com/63, you'll be able to get links to the other podcasts where I talk about keywords. Keywords are very important. However, keywords aren't going to help if you don't know who your target audience is. And I also have a free training on how to find your target audience. I'm going to link to that in the show notes also. So you've got a free podcast on doing your keywords, free training on how to find your ideal target audience. Once you have those 2 down, the keywords, think of them as almost as bullet points for your content. You can take those bullet points if you're not a quote writer. First off, if you're not a writer, become one, at least a little bit of one. Write once a week. Sit down once a week and just write something. If you have your list of keywords, write content about each of those keywords. Whether or not you ever use it, practice makes better. I know the saying is practice makes perfect, but there's nothing perfect in this world, is there? Practice makes better, though. So the more you write, the more you get used to writing, the more comfortable you are with writing, the better you're going to be. But here's a trick at the beginning. And if you've been listening to this podcast for any length of time, you probably know what I'm going to say. Jump onto Upwork or Fiverr.com. And of course, I'm going to have the links again in my show notes. Jump onto either one of those. Hire a freelancer. Get them to write the content for you. Now, it's not going to be perfect, and it's not going to be in your words. In fact, I would go with one of the least expensive. Go to Fiverr, give them $5 or $10 to write 1,500 words. Find one that does not do the best job, because you don't want one that does the best job. It's a lot easier to edit and change words that are already there and put it into your own words than it is to look at that blank screen and try to figure out what to write. So hire an inexpensive freelancer and then rewrite it yourself from there. That's my big tip for today. But like I said, content is necessary. It is one of the building blocks of your marketing strategy. In fact, I think I just might do a series of episodes on building blocks, because there's another one that's come up that I want to talk about in a future episode about hosting. People don't ever think about hosting. They just grab whatever hosting they can find, usually the cheapest we can find, right? It's just hosting, right? But hosting is becoming extremely important. It's another one of those building blocks that is absolutely necessary for your marketing strategy. But I'll talk about that in another episode soon. Hey, this is Dr. Ty. Thanks for listening to this episode of Easy SEO and More. Do me a favor. Give me a rating wherever you're listening to this. If you're watching it on YouTube, if you're listening to it on your podcast player, give me a rating right now before you do anything else. Those ratings help me get higher into the podcast search engine so that more people will find this and more people will be interested. And even more important than that, share this with your friends. You think of one other business person that you know that could benefit from this content and send this to them right away today. Thanks a lot. Y'all take care.